Surrealism is that time when you were younger where you were at bounty for a birthday party and you swore you saw a clown throw you an alley-oop for a 360 dunk, but apparently nobody saw anything. Those moments where reality is warped, allowing artists to explore anything they want to their fullest extent. The Surrealist movement started back in the 1900s, where dinosaurs walked the earth and ate scholarly cavemen. The term was coined by Andre Breton in 1924 in his novel The Surrealist Manifesto. He says that it is the action of creating a new reality, a super reality if you will, in the artist's mind, by using techniques such as juxtaposition and absurdity. These new types of realities are only constrained by the artist's imagination, meaning that anything they want to talk about can be explored to its fullest potential. So with the ability to warp reality, what have artists done with this unique art form? Yeah, so that's surrealism. I'm not downplaying the artist's work when I say that, however, because on one level, surrealism is supposed to be confusing. Surrealism indulges in the dream world, rejects normality, and embraces shock and absurdity, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense sometimes. Watching a movie and coming out thinking, did I just watch someone give birth or kill their child? Is a classic surrealist thought, but to associate this confusion of meaning with lack of meaning would be completely foolish. Although it's easy to look at works from Salvador Dali and David Lynch and think that's just a confusing mess, stripping the work of this meaning will only be doing yourself a disfavor. Surrealism was born between the period of World War I and its acclaimed sequel World War II, and in many ways acted as a political and societal response to the horrors of humanity. Andre Breton, that guy we mentioned earlier, came back from World War I a changed man. He was exposed to the grotesqueness of war and the societies that created them. As a result of this epiphany, Breton joined Dada, a rebellion that used art in hopes of inspiring others and exposing the harsh realities of this rational society. But what am I, the History Channel? In other words, this stuff is anything but meaningless. The meaning's just hidden under layers and layers of interpretation. Do you really think somebody made this with absolutely no thought in mind? That it just sparked in their head one day and they thought, hey, I guess I can make a movie. But on some level, that's the major appeal of surrealism. We get so many meanings from films such as Mulholland Drive or Eraserhead, and exploring these themes through absurdity and without the constraints of our own reality allows for the unapologetically whole version of these ideas to be explored. It doesn't matter that a girl is living in the radiator or that you find an ear in a field. What matters is what that means in relation to our own reality. However, this freedom to explore and produce absolutely anything in any manner, no matter how challenging it is to the norm or how disturbing it is, can turn off the average moviegoer. I don't think a Disney family would walk out of Mother thinking critically about the ideas of the movie. In fact, they'd probably be on their way to a therapist to help their 7-year-old child who's only been exposed to Nemo at this point. So this begs the question, is surrealism still popular? If so, how? Do I sound like every worksheet you got in a high school social studies class? Probably. But the answer to all these questions lies in the rise of approachable surrealism. So I just want to come out and say that yes, I'm a freshman in college. For my research, I have coined this term that could be completely meaningless to anybody that's watching. So I implore you, yes you, the viewer, to add on to this conversation. Correct me if you think I'm wrong. This is as much of a learning experience for you as it is for me. I don't want to come off as all-knowing because I'm not. And I'm not intending to explore every aspect of surrealism in this video, so you should probably go somewhere else if you want that. YourMovieSucks.org has an amazing series on the exploration of the surrealist film Synechdoche, New York by Charlie Kaufman. It is so amazing how in-depth he goes, so if you want a real analytical look at this, go watch that video after this one, please. And after liking and subscribing. Please. But enough with destroying my reputation. What is approachable surrealism? We all know that our media has evolved over the years. Our movies aren't in black and white anymore, and our music comes from a slightly smaller box where the notes somehow teleport into your ears. Seriously, how does Bluetooth work? With this, audiences now expect a level of sophistication and normalcy with the media that they consume. We crave meaningful dialogue. We want an explanation for every scene, shot, and line. We want thorough character arcs to scratch that little pretentious itch in the back of our heads. But this doesn't exactly line up with classic surrealist ideas. Again, surrealism rejects normalcy. Characters in surrealist films don't always act like normal human beings, and that can just turn some people off. However, one man, one superpower, one juggernaut of writing, has made a more approachable form of surrealism. And that man is Charlie Kaufman. Director and writer, Kaufman has made some of the most dizzying films to ever be put on screen. His directorial debut, Synechdoche, New York, is hailed as one of the greatest movies ever made, and it's a surrealist film. People move into houses that are constantly on fire. The main character creates a play that recreates the lives of thousands of people with only money from a single grant, and he hires a stalker to play himself, who then kills himself, so then he has to hire somebody else to play himself, and then he has to take up their role as the maid. So yeah, you could say this movie is far from normal. However, this film, much like Kaufman's other work, is much more approachable than early surrealist art. I think it's pretty clear to see how this is more easily digestible than this. So Kaufman's films are surreal, but still very approachable. How does he do this? Just to be clear, Kaufman is not the only person ever to explore this idea of approachable surrealism. Lynch and Alfonsky have both made works that have this type of approachable surrealism, but Kaufman is the man I know best, so I'll be yapping about him the most during this video. One of the primary reasons Kaufman's movies are so approachable is because of the characters. Kaufman's characters are genuine. They act like any person would when facing philosophical conflicts, as we all do. Death, identity, purpose, these characters struggle with very human conflicts in a surreal world rather than they themselves being surreal. In reaction to facing his mortality and feeling a sense of meaninglessness, Caden makes a play that is unlike any other, that will be the most purposeful work of art ever made. His life has to have meaning, and it will, if he can just make this one play successful. Kaufman himself in Adaptation is a self-conscious writer who spends the majority of the time degrading himself into oblivion and having constant writer's block. In Anamolisa, this little doll thing perceives everybody as the exact same. He lives in a world of normalcy, so naturally he freaks out when the one person he saw as unique leaves him. These are all very surface level descriptions of these characters, but even with these light reads, we can see how his characters are very genuine. They talk normally, they're self-conscious, they think in the way any average human being would. And when looking at early surrealist art, we can see how this is not the norm. In what many view as the first surrealist film, Enchant de Loup, characters are usually vessels for surrealism to act upon them. Spiders crawling out of a hand, a lady's eye getting cut open with a razor blade. These are some of the most iconic images in movie history, but not because of the characters that these acts are happening to. We can also see this in Eraserhead. Henry is not a shallow character, but his emotions are much more vague than any of Kaufman's characters. He rarely speaks, and when it does, it comes off as broken and awkward, like my grandpa at Thanksgiving.
Of course. I'd be happy to. Do I just cut them up like regular chickens?
Sure, just cut them up like regular...
He has innate desires such as love, but it's harder to see too much beyond that. There's no doubt that reading this character is a lot harder than Kaufman's. Again, this isn't bad. It serves its purpose, to detach the audience from our world and put us into the world of the surreal. But by having characters being an extension of their surrealist world, it's hard for audiences to connect with them. This is what makes Kaufman's characters so unique. Rather than being an extension of their detached surrealist world, they're some of the most genuine in all of cinema. It allows viewers to see themselves in these characters, bringing us into the world rather than taking us out. And through this connection, Kaufman's discussions of universal themes are that much more impactful. By having his characters think, act, and look like any of us would, his surrealist worlds are much more approachable. There's another quick example I want to cite for this section, so consider this the footnotes for the video, I guess. Nina in Black Swan is also a very detailed and very realistic character. She's relatable, her obsession is completely understandable, and all the surrealist things that happen to her is a commentary on her obsession. Okay, moving on. Surrealist works have often used eccentric camera movements and outlandish techniques to create the illusion of a warped reality, but Kaufman's camera is rather tame. In his directorial debut, Synechdoche, New York, Kaufman doesn't indulge in crazy camera work to make his reality feel unlike our own. In fact, what makes Kaufman's movies so unique and kind of eerie is how similar their reality feels to ours. Adaptation seems to take place in a completely normal world, up until the point the alligator comes and the Kaufman twins start getting manhunted like it's the most dangerous game. Synechdoche, New York has an outlandish plot, but the camera work does not reflect this at all. Wide shots are used to show the extreme loneliness of characters in the unique setting, but the camera movements and angles hardly ever make us feel like we're in a different reality, born out of the genius mind of Charlie Kaufman. In fact, a lot of the shots are completely still, just like Caden. He's stuck in this boring, mundane, and meaningless life, and we just have to sit there with him. Again, looking at Eraserhead, a lot of the shots have a glossy haze over the camera, making it feel as though we're in a dreamlike world completely unlike our own. Shots will sometimes have eccentric movements and be completely doused in shadow, with only a streak of light highlighting the subject of the frame. Slow motions and fades will transport the viewers into a different shot or sometimes a completely different dimension that we honestly cannot tell is even in the story world or not. Kaufman's camera is steady and floats around the character, creating a sense of realism and heightening the importance of the subject. The camera is only not still to either raise intensity or make it feel even more realistic. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the camera is almost completely in handheld, and this isn't just to make the audience dizzy, but rather to add a sense of authenticity. Although Kaufman didn't direct this film, it goes to show that a lot of his works don't always try and make it feel like we're in a different reality through cinematic techniques. Black Swan also uses the shaky cam to add a sense of authenticity and tension. Whenever those dances start and that camera starts shaking, my knees start buckling, because I'm feeling the pressure of every scene. Everything feels real, not like I'm in a separate reality. This focus on character and creating a sense of realism through cinematic techniques makes these surrealist films so approachable, especially compared to movies where this happens. In Approachable Surrealism, themes and setting are not the most insane thing you've ever seen. As we said before, many of Kaufman's films focus on universal aspects of humanity. Death, insecurity, purpose, loneliness. If you're watching a Kaufman film, you'll probably be facing these depressing topics head on. Many of these characters struggle with genuine human problems, and pairing this with genuine characters that we can relate to, it is no wonder why Kaufman's films are so much more approachable than early surrealist works. When expressing love in Eraserhead, Henry has sex with his eerily quiet neighbor in front of his alien baby before dancing with a deformed woman who lives in the radiator. While in Synechdoche, New York, love is expressed through Caden abruptly marrying the wrong person at the wrong time and craving someone new. See how understandable Caden's desire for love is? I mean, we've all been there. When comparing the two, it's kind of easy to see how much more understandable Caden's desire for love is than Henry's. Again, I'm not saying Eraserhead is completely nonsensical or meaningless, just that these universal ideas of love and death are much more approachable in Kaufman's works than a lot of other surrealists. The approachability of Kaufman's work continues with the settings, which are pretty mundane compared to other surrealist works. Synechdoche, New York takes place in, well, New York. Being John Malkovich takes place in Los Angeles, and Adaptation takes place in what seems like could be my own neighborhood. Except for that alligator part, we don't have the swamp near here. Kaufman's settings are, for the most part, completely recognizable, allowing the audience to connect with the reality of the film. So at this point, it may be kind of confusing. How is Kaufman even a surrealist? We've only talked about how he tries to enforce realism in his movies. Well, Kaufman's movies are similar to real life, but they are by no means identical. And this is seen in the way that Kaufman chooses to express his themes. For example, Synechdoche, New York is all about death, morality, and time. So in the now famous opening scene, we see Caden living what seems to be an average day, which we infer based off the way the scene is shot. Again, Kaufman uses his camera work to enforce normalcy. However, by looking at hidden clues such as expiration dates on milk cartons and listening to the news, we see that months, maybe even years, have passed by in a 5-minute scene. Again, in Synechdoche, New York, a major theme of the movie is that we're all dying from the beginning. So, naturally, Caden's love interest buys a house that's already on fire, showing that our actions can lead to our own deaths, even if it's years down the line. And when talking about the theme of purpose, Caden doesn't just try and produce another average play. Rather, he creates a life-size replica of New York with hundreds of thousands of actors and actresses, all from the money he got from a single grant. Impossible actions, fluid passage of time, Kaufman is definitely a surrealist when you look at how he chooses to express his ideas. While other aspects of the film create a sense of realism, the way Kaufman expresses his themes creates a sense of surrealism. And because we're already so entrenched into this movie because of the realistic aspects such as the setting and the characters, it makes those surreal aspects that much more approachable. Sure, it's a little shocking when Charlie's twin dies because he's being manhunted in a car crash, but we're not taken out of the film thinking, okay, that's a little bit too much for me. By implementing aspects of the real, we're more understanding of the surreal. We're open to these complex modes of portraying theme, and that's what approachable surrealism is all about. Although I talked a lot about why approachable surrealism is interesting because it allows the audience to be super connected to the world of the film, I don't think it's inherently better than normal surrealism, or vice versa. The beauty of surrealist work lies in the fact that we can show the impossible. We can make the dream sequences in our heads into reality. Approachable surrealism is just a result of people requiring more sophistication and normalcy in their stories. And I think Kaufman is the best at doing that in the way that he balances realism and surrealism. I think surrealist work is so special because of the absolute genius it takes to make a completely unique world with layers of meaning and interpretation. Even if your film lies in a unique reality of its own, and the portrayal of its themes can be really confusing, make it. Don't be afraid of the craziness, because sometimes we all need a little surrealism. Thank you for watching.
An idea, I think, if everybody...
Die.
Welcome to the outro again. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe if you want. I don't want to sound desperate, but I would really appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Have a good one. Alright, see ya.